Welcome back to a new series of the Fishing Daily podcast. And in this new episode, I am joined by Patrick Murphy from the Irish South and West Fish Producers Organisation. Patrick is here to set the record straight in relation to what was said at the Joint Committee on Fisheries and Marine last Tuesday. Welcome, Patrick.
Hi, Oliver. How are you doing? And Happy New Year, and to everybody that's watching. I think we're just in time before we can.
Well, I thought the new year ended a couple of weeks ago. So, Patrick, there was a little bit of controversy at the committee last week. What happened, and what's your point of view of the outcome?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to set the record straight because I didn't get the opportunity on the day, and anybody that watches the clip will see that. I tried to answer the deputy, and I'd say 5 or 6 seconds in, she cut me off. And when I tried to get back into answer it again, Conor McGuinness, the chair, decided that no, he wanted to move on. He did say that the deputy was out of order for bringing in the subject matter. So to answer a question, of course, any comment that I made on her page or any other page with my face on it means it's personal to me. It's my own Facebook page that I have well in advance to taking up my position in the South and West. And there is a South and West Facebook page, which is completely separate to me and my role as Irish South and West CEO. So I'm completely separate. So just to clarify with Deputy Whitmore's question from the off, that's there. Then the second part, no, what she asked had nothing whatsoever to do with what I was asked for, and that was to discuss marine protected areas. She spoke for 9 minutes, I'd say, to the department and to the NGOs that attended, and she was quite right to do so. But the industry, we weren't asked any questions by Deputy Whitmore with regards to do with marine protected areas, which I found regrettable, is the nicest word that I can say. But it also shows that Deputy Whitmore has to decide what she's doing on the committee and who is she there to represent, because I have a suspicion from some of the questions that people can see in her 10 minutes that she's not pro-fishing. And one of the questions she asked was about mapping, about the 10% of the areas that are protected. And she asked, do fishermen know when they're entering these areas? So you would have to question what context would that question put. So what if a fisherman goes into an area that's designated as a special area of conservation? I can't go any further than that, but here's the problem. Unless Deputy Whitmore is actually going to engage in proper debate and meet with the industry, then these questions go unanswered. I do know from my own local publication, the Southern Star, that Deputy Whitmore has met Save Our Sprat and those organisations. And yet, when we ask to meet and discuss these topics, we're not met with them. So it was disappointing then that our engagement, again, had nothing to do with fishing or my role in the committee, but was a personal question about my personal life. And to insinuate and try, as people would watch that do my organisation know what I'm doing? And that for them, if they did know, it wouldn't do them any favours. I think that's the direct quote that she said. And again, I would love to talk to the deputy to ask her, what did she mean by that comment? So there's a lot of unanswered questions to the short time that she did try and ask me my questions. And I would love, Oliver, that somebody like yourself would invite the deputy on to discuss these things first, and then maybe move on to what I really want to talk about, is Ireland's fishing industry and the impact that marine protected areas will have on them and the future that they have doing what they love and doing what their grandparents and previous generations have taught them to do and passed on to them.
Well, Patrick, just another small question before we move on to that area of or that topic is in the Irish Examiner. It was said that you and Deputy Whitmore were shouting over each other during the exchange. Was that the case?
No, and anybody can. It's great that this thing is actually recorded and is out for public viewing, and they can make up their own mind. No, the deputy asked the chair for leeway to ask me a question, and she got that remark out, and she said, and the chair then said, to finish it, we give you 30 seconds, Mr. Murphy, to respond. I started my response, and as I said, the first thing that I suggested to her, I was going to suggest more. She jumped in and, well, I'd say jumped down my throat would be a different description, a better description of it, and challenged me that it was on a public forum and whatever. So I listened to her. I did seeing that this aggressive behaviour by the deputy, so I felt that it would be better not to engage with her again and to go back to the chair. So after the chair told her that she was out of order and that we were going to move on, I felt I hadn't the opportunity to answer the allegations that were made against me. I tried to get the chairperson to give me back some of the 30 seconds that I had, just to clarify, like I've done with you, to say, no, the deputy, it is my personal page. It has nothing to do with my professional job in the Irish South and West, and then offer to meet her again and discuss it. Or, like she said, do it in a public forum or a social media site, no problem. If she wanted to, felt that that's where it should be discussed, I've no problem with that. But I didn't get that opportunity. And if you look at it, my engagement after the initial first 6 seconds was with the chair. I didn't speak to Deputy Whitmore, but Deputy Whitmore did come in on the debate. She was shouting in the background, and some of the stuff, as I said, that she continued on with her attack on me, and nothing else but an attack on me, then was perceived by Neil Michaels, the Cork Examiner journalist, that the chair shut it down because I was shouting over her. I was not. I clarified that with the journalist. I spoke to him afterwards, and he told me he wasn't returning to the story. So I said, fair enough. That's his prerogative, and I leave it there with the journalist. If he didn't want to cover my side of the story or take note of what I had to say, that's his choice. I can't force him, but that's Neil Michael's choice, not mine.
Yeah, it didn't seem to be quite the appropriate forum to bring up such a topic, especially when it was in the middle of discussing what marine protected areas, what impact they would have on the fishing industry. Did you get a chance to put that point across?
I did later on in the debate, because I pointed out the importance of a fishing industry in Ireland and the complexities. As you know, we take 15%. The stocks have reduced from 8 million metric tons of biomass for all species in our waters to 2. And that's according to our Taoiseach. So, like, that's a massive drop in fish stocks around our waters. Yet we only take 15% of it. You know, like, that is crazy that the stocks are being depleted that fast when we have such the smallest share. So you have to look at what you have to do to protect that. If you're protecting marine protected areas, all this information wants to come in. But I did ask this question. If you believe that fishing is the only damage that's being done to your environment, then logically, then fishing has to stop. And that means you don't have fishing, you don't have fishermen. So I wanted to find that out from the politician. Was that their viewpoint? Because Deputy Whitmore said in her statement when she was talking to the department about the mapping and where the maps were and could you see them, she said, well, does a fisherman know when he's entering one of these areas? Now, that wasn't expanded upon, because I wanted to know, why would you ask that question? What are you inferring by asking that question, like, you know? And I have a real fear from this party's viewpoint of fishing that, you know, they're looking for a full moratorium of all, no fishing inside 6 mile for sprat. You know, we have fishing that is bottom contact gear. Even a man in a punt that drags a dredge for to take up a few scallop, that could be construed as doing damage to the environment. So that has to go, you know. Trawling of all nature, then, of all boats and sizes, I believe a slippy slope, they'll have to go. So then you have to look at what is going to be allowed inside in these areas. Is it a hook and line fishery? Is that all we're left? You know, pot fishing, contacting the bottom, getting foul and weeds and stuff. Will that be, you know, there's so many things that I'd be afraid of engaging in conversation, knowing what I know, that could actually force fishermen out of their industry because they're deemed to be the ones destroying the environment. And yet they're there for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years fishing, And in actual fact, our numbers in boats over 50 meters has depleted from thousands of boats. Let's be honest, like. And in the last figures that I've seen and have shared on social media that was sent to me, boats numbering up to 500 or 600 are now down to 150 boats over 15 meters. And these are my figures. These are figures now, official figures. So we've lost 63% of our offshore fleet in 21 years. And instead of that being a concern to our politicians, that to me is where we're going wrong, in my view. So you decide first, do you want to have a fishing industry? So when we explained inside the meeting, like, we were asked about the different assessments and where you are on the spectrum. I'm using my hands now. So are the seagulls up here and the fishermen down here? Are fishing activity deemed as the most destructive part of the industry? So then when you look at the table and the outcome, then fishing is the bad guy, especially when that's the one that you only have data on that. And I explained this as Oliver. You can stop me now if I'm going on too long, right?
Okay. No, what's the
Okay, so I'll give it to you again, another stat at the meeting, right? And these are the things we should have been talking about to Deputy Whitmore. We are told by her ex-employer, right? She worked inside the Marine Institute. So her colleagues have told me when they've done an evaluation of the seafloor and the beds and the activities outside there, that the vast majority of fishing, 80%, is in 20% of the fishing grounds, right? So that means 80% of the ground that we have, the massive area that's outside there, could be earmarked for marine protected areas. But what are you protecting in those areas? You see, again, if it's only the fisherman that you deem is the one that's doing the damage and nothing else, right? Then you have a problem. And a big problem, because we fish everywhere to that extent. And we're always told about this spillover, right? This marine biologist term for a reason why we should do marine protected areas. But you see, if they actually spoke with a fisherman or went out with a boat and learned about the actual operations of a fishing boat, they would learn that a fisherman protects his productive fishing areas with huge secrecy, right? So he doesn't like other fishermen to know, because they'll go into his productive fishing grounds and catch more fish. But these fishing grounds are visited multiple times during the year. And I'm going to be very logical in what I'm saying now, right? And when fishermen go in there, they don't catch fish that are only a couple of months old because they'd be too small. They catch 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 3-year-old, 2-year-old fish, which means they cannot originate inside that area if the premise is that fishermen are bad and are wiping out the place, like the likes of Jennifer Whitmore has said from trawling activities, that they're cleaning out the bays and they're wiping out the bays, right? That means that everything gets taken out. So if you're taking out all the fish, where are the 5-year-olds coming when you go back 6 months later or 2 months later? They don't obviously generate inside there. A 5-year-old fish doesn't turn into a 5-year-old in 2 or 3 months. So if you're going to push people out of the productive areas, then you're going to put them into less productive areas. And to catch the same amount of fish, you're going to have to fish twice as long. So if your evaluation is that activity of a fishing boat is doing the damage, now you're doubling their activity somewhere else. So does that make sense? Absolutely not. That this is logical what we're talking about here. But yet you'll be told by the scientists that in their surveys, oh, it is. But that makes no sense. Unless they're saying that in 5 or 6 years' time of no activity inside there, eventually there'll be a spillover. But that only happens if the area you're protecting is what? A spawning ground, where fish come in to breed and spawn and stay there and grow, and don't leave that area for 3 or 4 years before they go into the actual fishing grounds. Otherwise, they'll be caught, and there is no spillover. So you see, you have to be logical about your arguments, and it has to make sense. You can't just wish something to be true. This isn't Disneyland. This is reality. And unfortunately, for somebody who has um, accreditations and qualifications in this area, why are they so afraid, in my view, to have these debates with us, to meet and talk to the fishermen so that we can put our side forward rather than an NGO? I don't understand that. But
Patrick, looking at Deputy Whitmore's CV on LinkedIn, it doesn't seem that she's ever actually really ever taken part in marine biology, that she's been a policy officer, more so when she was working in the Marine Institute. And she's also a policy officer when she was working in Australia. So to me, it's difficult to see where somebody who hasn't had their boots on the ground would understand it's really like for fishermen and for the fish stocks and everything else that's out there. It seems to be that she's more closeted in an office rather than being an actual participant.
yeah, well, I'm going to start this off now by protecting myself, Oliver, because Deputy Whitmore has brought this about. So any opinion I'm giving to you now is not as the Irish South and West CEO. It's a personal opinion so that it doesn't fall back in my organisation. To be able to answer that question, I'd have to go to a boardroom, to be honest, and ask their views on it. I can only give my personal view so that I'm not jeopardising my organisation, and rightly so. So I'll give you my own personal view, regardless of her qualifications, okay, and what she has or has not done. She is a public representative. She has been elected by the people to represent the people. And I, as one of those people, maybe not in her constituency, but if she's speaking as a maritime affairs and she's on the maritime committee, then she shouldn't restrict herself to her own constituency. And my vessels fish around those areas. And if she wants to have proper debate and discussion and put her own viewpoint forward and discuss it with us, then we are all ears. We want to sit down with all politicians and discuss it. So you could be correct in your own assertion here, and I don't know enough about policy officers at the Marine Institute. I do know that I'm catching up in science myself. I haven't gone to college, but are in a kitchen and you're working in a kitchen for 5 to 10 years, you pick up a few things. So that's what I'd say to you about the biology and stuff like that. And we are asked to put papers together for our minister when we're going into these discussions. And we're asked as expert witnesses by the same people to come in there. And yet, Deputy Whitmore, right, didn't feel it was appropriate to discuss those issues with us as expert witnesses. She chose to speak to the other expert witnesses inside the group. And I think that is not good. And I don't agree with that personally, 100%. And I can speak for my organisation on this. We need to speak to our politicians who are drafting policy, like you say, who are going to make decisions that are going to have a huge impact on our ability to continue to do what we do. And if we're not having that engagement, then it is kind of hypocritical to hear them then say that, oh, you need to talk to the fishermen, the government need to talk to the fishermen, which was the consensus on the day, and it came out of the meeting. Now, maybe you could ask Deputy Whitmore, does she agree with that? Then don't be a hypocrite telling other people to talk to the fishermen when you yourself won't talk to the fishermen. So, and I'm pointing this out, that's, again, logical. So the deputy wanted to debate an issue that she wanted debated online to do with my personal opinion, yet she won't talk to me in my professional capacity as a representative fisherman about fishing interests. And I'm wondering, well, why are you on the committee? No, of course, they cover an awful lot of other areas. But if you're not talking to fishermen and you're only talking to the other side, then you can't be pro-fisherman, in my view, personal view. Then you're anti-fishing. You have to be, because you're not talking to the fishermen, and all you're saying then, as she has said in the Oireachtas, oh, we must stop fishing. This is detrimental. It's a forage fish. We must protect the seals and the dolphins. There has to be food there for them. It ignores the fact that the species he's talking about only lives for 3 years. And if the dolphins, the whales, and the birds and everything else don't eat those fish, they fall to the seafloor. Now, Deputy, Whitmore would be quite correct in saying, well, then it becomes a food source for the bottom dwellers and the seafloor. Absolutely. But our job is to catch fish and feed the human species and whatever other animals it's used for, even if it's used in an indirect way to feed us, which goes into feedstuffs for farm fish. People might think that's wrong, but like, then do you start evaluating, well, fish are used as bait in pots to catch other fish to eat? You know, like tomato. What is it you're actually standing for here? Do you know? And for me, it's not the fishermen, especially when they're not going to talk to us to iron out this. It could be my miscomprehension of the deputy, like, but I can only make my opinions on what I see and what I hear and what the actions that party and their representatives are making. And telling fishermen who have fished for 40 or 50 years inside an area that we will not discuss a management plan, we will not discuss a way to allow you to continue to follow your heritage, but we are going to throw you out of it and take away your fishing rights. We're saying that you should have a transition. A transition to what? When we explain that the fishing stocks have been depleted like they have, where do fishermen go? So just to say that you can go somewhere, I don't think that is appropriate or good enough, right? To say a fisherman should get help. What help? If you want to know what that help the fishermen want, surely the first thing you should do is talk to us, and find that out. So by not doing that, it indicates to me they really are being disingenuous towards us and they couldn't care less. The only thing they want to do is stop you fishing. And that's anti-fishing. If you don't want the person to fish, you describe it as anti-fishing. The person that's operating in that field, a fisherman, you are now anti-fisherman, anti-fishing industry. Again, that's my own opinion from what I see. The deputy has criticised me on the Oireachtas panel with her privilege, and I find that unacceptable. I think that, I'm trying to reach out to that deputy in emails and on social media to discuss things, and yet she won't meet. I've sent emails as the Irish South and West to the deputy and to her party, and as the CEO, I've rang their offices. I've asked for them to meet with us. We haven't had one meeting, Oliver. I'm here 10 years. I don't know how long the Social Democrats are in existence, but I do have emails going back from talking to Holly Kearns before she became the leader in interactions and trying to give her information and having some good in that, but they've never actually sat down and had a conversation, like they have with other organisations, which you can see on the Southern Star. And Jennifer Whitmore is in the picture, and their local representative, Isabel Taus. So what can I say any more on the subject then, and to come and debate with us, come and talk to us, come and engage with us. If you're really serious about representing fishermen and the interests of fishing families around the coastline, please talk to us.
Well, yeah, when you go on a committee or a panel or anything like that, that's you need to speak to everybody right across both spectrums of whether you're anti-fishing or whether you're pro-fishing, whether you're pro-marine protected areas, anti-marine protected areas. The only way you can educate yourself on the reality of things is the situation is by going out and speaking to the people that's going to be affected by political decisions. And do you find this across political parties in Ireland? Is there no appetite to engage with the fishermen, or we seem to have, and since December, we seem to have a more of a rally. We've heard the Taoiseach probably talking about the fishing industry more than what he's done since he became leader of Fianna Fáil. Is there more engagement with political parties out there, or is this just sort of like a smoke blanket that's happening at the moment?
I don't know how people are going to take this, but I'm 10 years at this job, Oliver, right? And I watched and tried to engage, like you said, and back and forth, and some good relationships, some bad ones. And I seen what was coming. Anybody involved in the industry could see it wasn't going to be good. Even the fishermen inside the industry themselves are very worried, and Brexit and COVID, and we got a taste of it. So we held rallies. We brought people up the rivers and stuff like that. And in my own personal view, I felt so strongly, I actually put myself into the political arena, you know? And my organization, looking back now, would say, well, did you do the right thing or the wrong thing? I don't know. But look at the outcome. I ran for the European elections. I didn't disgrace myself. I ran with a political party, maybe not the best choice for what I wanted, but I did. I can't overturn that. Would I go back and change my? I probably would, to be honest, because it wasn't about politics. I wanted to tell people the dire situation we were in. And I do believe that if you had strong representation in Europe, we could still push it. That the legalities that are afforded to us, we're not looking for them. We're not really standing up for them in Europe. And I understand the geopolitical reasons for that. But if you went out there as a candidate, you'd be free of all, constraints, in my view, and you go on to the Fish Committee and you demand fairness. It is not fair in this century that we are losing our fishing industry because others are taking more in our waters than we're allowed to take. That is colonization. The rules of the common fishery policy have been breached. They were to protect our coastal communities and the stocks and the oceans. And we've just talked about marine protected areas. Our communities we've talked about are being decimated. People are getting out of the industry and the stocks are depleting. So they failed, right? I wanted to raise that. And I think the government heard it. And I think they heard it because they seen the 17,000 votes that I got in my first effort with a political party that was not on the spectrum, had no funding or nothing, right? So I think they became aware of it. So what happened afterwards? Look at what was adopted into the programme for government, which was completely different from any other programme for government I'd ever seen. And we got a minister. We actually got our own minister for Fisheries, Timmy Dooley. Are you asking, are they more aware? Absolutely. Timmy Dooley, even though he gets a lot of slack and criticism online, is genuinely engaging with the industry. We are meeting Taoiseachs. They are now talking about us. We are out in Brussels. We are meeting with MEPs. That never happened before. Genuinely, in my time, the only person that spoke to me in my 10 years in politics in Europe was Leonie Rida. She really went out of her way, but she was on the Fish Committee. The other politicians really didn't have an interest. And I understand this, and people need to understand. The fishing industry, as you know, is highly complex. The regulations that govern it are complex. You've seen what the coastal states have done, and we're even trying to, next story will be about the macro sharing arrangement and everything else. That's another, hopefully you will bring me on for that, what we're doing in the background. So, has it improved? Yes. Has it delivered? No. Absolutely not. Talk is cheap. We've been promised a new task force. We have our own TORs. We have an industry that's genuinely on its knees, and it's worth millions, hundreds of millions. People have invested into this, not just one generation, the second generation. People put their lives into this. Ask fishermen now on the prawn boats, how many days do they spend on land and how many days they spend at sea? The vast majority is at sea and in gales and storms and everything, trying to make a living, and yet they're being told you're the bad guys. It's incredible. So this again is what I'm saying to you. This is what frustrates me with the likes of parties such as the Social Democrats. Talk to us. If you really believe we're the demons and the stuff, you're the breed biologist. Tell us how. Tell us what we can do to change, what we can do to make sure we protect our environment. But there's none of those conversations being had. We're just the villains. So again, it boils down to this very simple question, Oliver. Is there a political will to have a fishing industry around our coastline? Irish boats. We definitely have other boats. They're not going to go away. You can't take away their rights unless we leave the European Union, which is going to happen, despite everybody calling for it. It's not. Could we leave the common fishery policy? I think we should be asking that question. Why? Because if we keep going on the trajectory we're going for, right? And I'll actually share that information with you that I asked from the Marine Institute, and a very simple document. I asked them to show our opportunities across the species since 2019. Every one of them are going that way, down. The trajectory, it's not feasible for a fishing industry to survive on the little bit of fish that we have. And the complexities of this was borne out during the meetings with the Council of Ministers in Europe. We were promised when we joined the European Union that our fishing stocks and everything be looked after, like I explained. We were also given an insurance policy 4 years later after we joined. And just to explain this for the listeners, right? When we joined the EEC, right, in the Treaty of Accession in 1973, the jurisdiction of our waters was out to 12 miles. That's all we could give to the other countries. We did, the rest were international waters. But because of the cod wars in the 70s, the United Nations stepped in and they increased every country's jurisdiction from that 12 to 200. But remember, we had joined the EEC, so none of that was written into the legislation. It wasn't thought of. It was like Brexit, right? So then they had to come up with a policy to allow all those fishing boats back into our waters and how much they were allowed to catch. And we, not as a nomadic fleet, had no rights in any other countries. Our waters were full of fish, right? We had no problem. We had thousands of boats. So what changed to change where we are today? The other countries came in and they've been hoovering up fish. They've been taking too much fish and they're depleting the stocks. And we've tried MSY and it hasn't worked. Marine maximum sustainable yield hasn't worked. The stocks are still going down. But because we've the smallest shareholder, we're going to be the first to have to exit the industry. That's logical. In a country like Belgium, have 450 ton of sole in your waters and you've 28. Which fleet will go out of business first if the fish is halved or quartered, right? If we're meant to survive at 28 tons, then that 450 will have to be reduced 20 times by that amount, do you know what I mean? To get down there. 20 times 28 is 460, is it? Or 560, am I wrong? 560, right. So not 20 times, say 15 times just to be safe. So they can see a cut of that magnitude every year, which will have nothing.
Yeah.
So you see, the system is not conducive to us or our survival. It's just not. It's the same with hake. It's the same with monk. I could pull out the stock book there. We could go down species by species. The one species that we had a good share in was mackerel. And then Norway, England, Faroes, and Iceland decided to take more. And because of that, we've gone from a species that had a catchable biomass of up to 790,001 in 5 years ago, down to 174 now. But we followed the science. We never overfished. So other people have decimated the stocks in our own waters, and we've suffered as a result. And then the only thing that protected us from what happened was the hake preferences, that we wouldn't lose as much, that because they had more fish than us, they'd take a higher burden than us. And then we were told no. So this is where we're at. But nobody's having that conversation. Nobody's looking at each individual entrepreneur, fisherman. What have you lost? How can we replace it? Where can we go? If you have to stay money, this is your outlay. It costs you 500,000 to just run the boat, keep the boat going, right? Pay for fuel. But there's only 400,000 worth of fish for you to catch legally. So what happens? Who's going to make up the shortfall? Who's going to pay the wages? And not because the fish aren't there, because a Spanish boat alongside us, like the one that went ashore in Dingle, landed 30 ton of monk in one landing. That for an Irish boat could be 6 landings. Do you know what I mean? So they have the ability to ride out the storm, we put it. And the storm is the drop in biomass in stocks. We'll go first. So when you're asking about the political realities, I think they get it now. I think they're finally listening to the likes of me telling them, you can't hide from this anymore. If you want to protect and keep an Irish fishing industry, you're going to have to seriously think about what needs to be done. And in fairness to Micheál Martin, I think he got it. And he says, right, then we have to look at measures that we have to put in place and set up another task force. My fear is is that the same people that were there the last time are there now, despite ourselves. So despite the plan that we developed, right, wasn't implemented the way we wanted it, I can say, right? So could we have done better? Yes. Will we be going to that again? Well, here's my prediction. If you do, we won't have an industry. People cannot go to sea to fish if they're not allowed to catch the fish that are out in front of them. And when cameras come on board, the people that are inciting those meetings saying that fisheries are bad will be presented with a scenario where a boat that has 50 kilos of fish to catch in a calendar month, if he's unfortunate enough to catch more than that 50 kilos in a tow, he's doomed.
The question of what the task force is going to be is still hanging over everybody. Like,
Yeah, easy. I know why it's there, and the ministers have agreed why it's there. We're in trouble, right? But I'd rather to know what the overall goal is. Is the overall goal to protect what we have and to maintain what we have, or protect the future for future generations of future fishermen? That's the question that needs to be put. And then you can work back from that to see what needs to be done to ensure that is going to be the reality going forward. Look, and we're spending a lot of time talking here now, and people will be probably tired of hearing my voice if they go to the trouble of listening to all of this, Oliver. Maybe you'll cut it up because we've gone into other areas. But World War II devastated Europe. And one thing that they were made quite aware of during the war and everything else was there wasn't enough food there, right? There was food shortages and people were rationed. So this is making up stuff, people. This actually happened. My mother-in-law, who was an elderly woman, told me that she hadn't seen a banana for 6 years. Imagine. Wouldn't get a banana. Getting an orange was a treat. Like, it was, forget about sweets. I'm talking about stuff. So then they looked at agriculture and everything else, and people coming out of the war, and they need food, and people need to live, and rebuilding and everything else, right? So they set up the agricultural policy, and they enticed farmers to go farming because they needed food. Isn't it amazing? In this century now, in these years, we're trying to stop the production of food in our country and give it to Brazil to chop down rainforests and because we want to sell cars and stuff. But here you go. But in the fishing industry, again, the solution is to import the fish. 80 to 90%. Yeah, keep importing it. Yeah, we'll have fellas packing fish and sending fish around the country. People still have fish to eat, and both will catch fish in Irish waters, take it back to their own countries, fly it back to us, or send it back to us and process it at home. This is the reality. This is the future. So again, it boils down to a simple question to politicians and anybody watching this. Should Ireland have a fishing fleet? And if you want that, you work back from that and you put in place, like as I said, that Europe did for food production. You put in place whatever's needed to make sure they survive and ride it out. Now, people say to me, well, how long does that go on for? Well, how long does it take for a fish to grow to be it? And I think it's 2 to 3 years. Well, it's spread, it's a year, right? For some species. So then we wonder, well, how can stocks recover? Well, a fish spawns thousands of larvae. Thousands, not one, thousands of offspring. So the chances of them recovering in a very quick time is minimal. So what do you have to do? Well, first of all, you have to look at the activity, what's going on in Europe, and you see, can it be sustained? Yes or no? And again, this is where Deputy Whitmore should be coming into it as the marine biologist and marine expert that she's, saying she is, as you said. We don't know for 100%, but let's give the woman, the opportunity that it's true. Why isn't she looking at that? Why aren't we looking at the actual realities of what's in front of us? If you're really concerned about the fishing industry and the families and fairness for them, talk to us and say, well, here's what the problems we see. Are we right or wrong? And how do you look for the solution in this? Set aside the political decisions and the treaties and everything else. You're the marine biologist. Is this sustainable? If you take the Irish fishermen out, will the stocks repair? If the effort is maintained by the other countries on the pathway that they're in, following MSY, will the stocks repair? That's a simple question. And all the evidence points to no, because we've seen it since 2019, and the stocks are going down, down, down. Not one stock, but every stock. The only stock that we could say that thrived and has come up is boarfish. Sure, we cut that. Come to load to catch it. I'm sorry for laughing, like, but you're told to fish at MSY, and then you're told, well, these are long living stock, and if we catch them now, they won't be there in 10 years' time. That's madness, like. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the recruitment, or if there's you have to look at the population control as well too in fisheries, and I'll explain this very simply to those that are know anything about animals. My father, Danny Murphy, always used to say to me when we were describing about farming, the water, and mussel lines in the bay, he said, if you put 2 cows and 2 calves into an acre of ground, they live. Put 4 cows and 4 calves, they'll all starve because it's not sustainable. Well, it's the same for fishing. We use boats and we use effort. And if the effort exceeds the resource that's there or the stock's chance to recover, taking out the smallest player, the fella catching the 28 ton, and leaving the other fella catch the 450, well, how is that going to protect the stocks?
That's true. You can't. There's very little advantage taking out the small man. Bit of it, without seriously looking at what the other countries are getting out of it.
And no, Eddie, no, this is what people really should realize. These others are others. They are coming into our waters. You're talking about the local indigenous people are being told on your reservation, stop killing the buffalo. We're going to kill it. This is the reality. They made westerns about it for buffaloes and stuff. Please God, somebody will decide to make a film about the fishing industry to tell the tale that's happening. And you can see it every day here out my window. Like, you can see, well, at the weekends anyway. And the lorries lining up and the boats coming in and filling and the Irish boats tied up. It's incredible. And we're doing it to ourselves. And we have politicians then saying, well, we must protect the marine environment and everything else, yeah? And who do they target? The weakest and the smallest. It's just so wrong.
Well, yeah. I think the simple truth is for people watching is there is the fish there.
Yeah.
There is a issue that fish stocks are decreasing.
Yep. From effort.
But the thing about it is that the common fisheries policy is not allowing for a fair redistribution of the stocks that would enable the Irish fishing industry to survive.
And they proved that by allowing the hay preferences to be taken away from us this year, something that was there for 49 years. So they've shown intent. So they've told the Irish people, you're not entitled to survive. Because they never did a socioeconomic evaluation or relative stability evaluation of what this meant for the Irish fleet. They just said, we want them, we're taking them, and you do without them. Not in our waters, in yours.
In your waters, yeah. Somebody come in and taking your potatoes and saying to you, you're not allowed any.
Yeah, and worse, when it comes into my mind, Oliver, I'm going to tell you something else that people need to know, and hopefully this will be shared outside of just our own community, and they can take the bits out of it. You'll cut the bits out of it, right? So we're told, right, in the bilateral between Europe and Norway, right, it's called a balance transfer. So we have European countries getting access into Norwegian waters and they coming into European waters, right, and trading fish and working out, a trade deal. So our share of that trade deal now, right, Ireland, as a part of the European Union. So this year, we will give in the balance transfer from all of Europe 47,000 tons of blue whiting. So each country will throw a bit into the pot. They'll give it to Norway, and Norway then will come and fish it. Okay, right? So our part of that is 5,000 tons of blue whiting. Okay, but the main thing is we're talking about access now. We're talking about Europe going into Norwegian waters, and this is the trade-off. But the European waters are Irish waters.
Mm.
They don't move around and catch these fish anywhere else. They want to come into Irish waters. So they'll take 47,000 ton of blue whiting out of the waters of Ireland, right? And of that 47,000, we'll give 5,000. And in return, we get 240 ton of cod all the way up in Norway. We can't get the Scandinavian herring because Norway has included that in the deal. They've pulled that out, right? Isn't that an incredibly bad deal for Ireland? But if you look at the other countries, so the cod this year is 8,700 tons.
Mhm.
And again, I'm saying to you, the blue whiting that's being traded, where is it originating it from? Whose fish is it that's being traded? Norway will tell you it's our fish because that's what they say about the mackerel, that the fish spent so long inside our waters, it's ours. But in reverse, that's not taken on board by everybody else. Now, I'm going to tell you something else now that people haven't realized of how badly our fishermen are being treated, right? So when Brexit happened and we had to give up 25% in total between our rights and what we were catching and our losses from the likes of squid and access to the Irish sea herring and stuff like that, right? So that's what was paid. The STECF did an evaluation. They looked at all the countries and they said in real terms, Ireland paid 40% of the bill. But we didn't, right? We
Mhm.
paid far, far more, right? Because the UK, right, retained their access to Irish waters. So when you add up all the entitlements that they have in the Irish Sea, give the porcupine, for instance. So say they had 800 ton of porcupine prawns, right? And you give it an average value of those very expensive fish, right? We say they can go as high as 40, 45 euros a kilo, 45,000 euros a ton. So we'll be realistic, 20,000. So now you pull out the calculator and you multiply, right? 800 tons by 20,000.
1.6 million.
No, 16 million.
16 million.
16 million. So you see, we didn't just pay the 39 million. We allowed them to come into our waters and catch, and that's only one species now, mind you. So they never added the rest of them. So that wasn't taken into consideration about Ireland's contribution to the Brexit deal. And you know what the worst part about it is this? We sacrificed a quarter of our fleet for that deal. We had to get rid of them because we weren't allowed to catch the fish in our own waters, right? So these injustices are added to and added to and added to. Now, have you ever heard that, and you're at this a long time, that detail being given to you
Yes, 16 million
on one species
on
in
one
one area?
species. And, you know,
And now, wouldn't you think that your politicians should be armed with that and the likes of the Social Democrats should be talking to us about those arguments and that statistics and that way so that we can protect our fishing industry? And again, it comes back to the question I've said 101 times in this interview. These parties need to decide genuinely, do they want an Irish fishing fleet?
Mhm.
Because the Irish fishing fleet that's there at the moment can't survive on what they're being allowed. We've gone down 70% in mackerel in 1 year, right across the board. Like we've added up the figures. We're down nearly 50% of what we had last year in fish. You know, we've been halved. Imagine some fella going into a farmer's yard and saying, well, half your cows are gone, half your chickens are gone, half your pigs are gone. And not just for this year, but every year. It's going to get worse. Like next year, there'll be probably even less fish because the fish stocks are gone down. So when is the realization, as I said, going to come into place when a politician, any politician, will actually start talking? And you know what? We haven't even discussed the Mercosur agreement. You hear all about the farming and the bees and everything else. Do you not think fish is going to be imported in here?
It's like you got a huge market in Argentina, Brazil, and these other countries where there's chub mackerel and everything else. It's, there's one processor in the UK that already stopped buying mackerel from the UK and Norway, and they're buying it from Peru because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's seen as more sustainable because they can put it sustainably sourced on their cans. And that's the reality of all the issues that's being classified, all the sustainability that's been added to the fish stocks in European waters will collapse and disappear because they're not being classified as sustainable anymore.
Yeah, and you see, the first fleet to go will be Ireland's, because we've the smallest share of our own fish again. We've only 15% of the stocks being taken from our waters.
Yeah.
So we're the smallest shareholder in our own. We are on the reservation, our own reservation, and we're being stripped of the resources. And again, it comes back to this. This is what infuriates me with that meeting. And like, I don't want now to move this back into the Irish South and West in a way. My own opinion was used against me, right? It was, I think, in an attempt to discredit me. I think then that the people I'm representing, and that's what the threat was that do your organization know what you're saying? Like, so what is the intention of that party towards Ireland's fishing industry, its coastal communities? What is true belief? Do they really, really have our best interests at heart? Like, I personal opinion is far, 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 far from it. Absolutely far, far from it. And when you're asked, going back to the initial question, well, what do you believe the political spectrum? If you have an entire party that's against you, then it's very hard to make progress then, because if there's anything put forward or whatever else, you have a blocking minority, just like the one in Europe that cost us the eggs. And yet these people are then going out and saying, oh no, we're pro-fishing, we're there, and so many fishermen come to talk to us, and this is what they're saying, and they're splitting us, they're dividing us, and they're turning one against the other.
Well, if you're a fisherman that's spoken to the Social Democrats, please feel free to contact me. I'll gladly speak to you and listen to what you had to say to them and what their reply was to you. That's the offer's there. What more can I do?
Yeah. No, listen, Oliver, thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to speak on this at length. It's been interesting as always, and we could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours. The problem is that to get this out to the public, it's a long watch. So I'm asking you to put on trailers, sound bites, just like the deputy did in her sound bites when she was criticizing, I think, other politicians when she was putting out sound bites. And look, I don't know, will this lead to 5 burly fellas coming after me, 5 brothers? I don't know. We'll see. I'll keep you informed.
Right, Patrick. Thank you again, and we'll be chatting to you soon.
Take care, Oliver. Thanks so much.
If you like this episode or any of our other episodes, please hit the subscribe button and show your support for independent news in the fishing industry. Thank you.